Welcome to the Bodybuilding, Not Bodybreaking YouTube channel. Here we are giving you guys an explanation as to what the practice entails. What are we talking about when we say bodybuilding, not bodybreaking? So that way our viewers can kind of get an understanding of to where we're coming from. What does it mean? Basically, what we're trying to do with practice is blends the concept of internal training and external training. Internal being tissue-specific training and external being task-specific training. Let's start with differentiating those two. External task-specific training is what everybody watching this video likely already does, right? Traditional weight training exercises, the squat, the hinge, deadlifts, RDLs, that kind of thing, pushing like bench pressing, shoulder pressing, and pulling, rowing, pull downs, pull-ups, things of that nature. So external training, task specific, would be what traditional weight training already entails, and the objective being, can you accomplish the task? Can you squat from point A to point B? Can you pick up the weight from point A to point B? Can you push the weight from point A to point B? Or can you pull the weight from point A to point B? So that takes us to internal training as tissue-specific training. Tissue-specific training would entail how well does a joint function on an individual movement basis? And what does that mean? So in this Venn diagram, we contrasted it with external training, but with internal training, we have to say like internal rotation of the shoulder, internal rotation of the hip, external rotation of shoulder and hip. We have flexion, and then we have extension. And we have abduction, adduction of both. We have pronation and supination of, say, the elbow. We have eversion and inversion of the ankle. And then we have dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. So internal training, it being tissue-specific training, how well does the joint function without compensation? And so what would that look like? So an example would be, can the shoulder internally rotate without the scapula elevating with it? Can your hip internally rotate without having your pelvis hike up? Can you externally rotate your shoulder without having your spine extend into it? And so the idea is that if we are only doing external task-specific training, then our internal environment being sacrificed as a result, right? Our internal environment is accommodating being that it is prioritizing all of the ranges of motion that are currently being used with these specific exercises. So over time, your shoulder will start to prioritize only the ranges of motion that you use in the bench press or in the shoulder press or the incline press, the decline press, or your hip only uses the ranges of motion that you're exposing it to in the squat and the deadlift. And so the notion of that our bodies do only these exercises and that these exercises are somehow going to create a robust human being is a flawed concept. Our bodies do a whole lot more than squat, deadlift, push, and pull. Weight training in the industry often neglects a lot of this stuff. And so most weight training programs are involved only with external task-specific exercises, but there's no regard for how well does the internal environment actually function to facilitate these exercises in a safe and productive manner. So if you don't have, say, internal rotation of the hip or shoulder when you're squatting or pushing, you quite literally are body breaking. But the term bodybuilding, we're building our body, right? But how many people have their knees hurt when they squat? How many people have their back hurt when they deadlift or their shoulder hurt when they bench press? That is a perfect example of internal tissue-specific function not lining up with external task-specific demands being imposed on the body. And so the objective here with the whole bodybuilding, not bodybreaking concept is to blend the two practices together, and we can create a more long-term and sustainable approach to weight training that we probably really haven't seen in the fitness industry. I think part of where we see this vision coming from and why now, right? Like what does this concept do that isn't currently being done? And I think when we start to see that the fitness industry, right, like exercise hasn't really changed that much in the last 50 years, right? Like, and still to this day, we see a lot of people still using machines, free weights, dumbbells, barbells, but we see people warming up, right? We see people doing warm-ups and they think that they're doing stuff like this. The problem is there's no training being done for this. People treat a warm-up as just warming up. And I think what we're trying to do is create a paradigm shift that is basically saying you are not just warming up your joints, we need to train the function of these joints. And so that creates a different sense of urgency and understanding with a little bit more specificity to the program when instead of just warming up my shoulder, no, I'm training the internal rotation of my shoulder. Or no, I'm training the external rotation of my shoulder or the internal of my hip, the external rotation of my hip. And so when we start to understand that this isn't just warming up, it is training the function of a joint to facilitate our traditional external task-specific exercises, I think that's what's setting this practice apart from other approaches in the fitness industry. We have this section here as as the middle. And there's a middle ground for this stuff. So for example, we could say that the hinge and the deadlift, if let's say we're doing a Romanian deadlift where we're leaning over just at our hip, we are training hip flexion and hip extension. We could say when we're squatting, we're training hip flexion, we're training abduction, we're training some external rotation, we're training some internal rotation. When we're pulling, let's say we're doing like a dumbbell pullover, we could say that that's shoulder flexion if you're laying on a bench with a dumbbell over your head. And so you start to see where, yes, there is a clear division of what internal and external training is, but there's also some crossover. And so that's where the whole understanding of how do we program this kind of goes into effect. Where like, if we're gonna be doing, say, squats, when we're training squats, what internal function do we need to promote and facilitate not just a safer squat, but a more potent squat too, right? Like if we wanna be strong, we need to have properly functioning internal environment. If we wanna be well developed as like say a bodybuilder, we wanna have good internal environment. And so regardless of your goal, if you have a hip, your internal training. If you have a shoulder, your internal training. And so this applies to everybody, regardless of their goal, whether they're in rehab, right? They're trying to rehab a joint, whether you're into strength training, whether you're into athleticism, or whether you're just a casual gym goer. These functions of our joints ultimately allow for the facilitation of any extracurricular movement, right? Regardless of what your goal is, your goal should be to move better in a long-term and sustainable way, regardless of what your secondary goal is, whether it's bodybuilding, powerlifting, strongman, sport performance, any of those, or all of them for that matter. But when we're talking about programming, then we would say, okay, what entails in the squat? Well, in the squat, we need to be able to get hip flexion, and we need some internal and external rotation. And so we're gonna train internal rotation and flexion on the squat so that I can ensure that I am able to get enough flexion and I'm able to internally rotate to get deeper into flexion. Let's say I'm gonna deadlift and I need to get some hip extension where I'm posteriorly tilting my pelvis and squeezing my butt. I'm gonna train hip extension and external rotation of the hip because those two zones are paired together. Or let's say I'm gonna bench press and I need to make sure that I can internally rotate and contract my pec on the bench press. Or maybe I need to train my spine extension because I have a hard time maintaining a tall chest as I press and I don't have a good internal environment to train my chest pressing in, right? My pushing external movement. And I need to train spine extension to facilitate more pushing output. And so not only are we trying to create a stronger, more robust system, but you're also getting more bang for your buck, right? The potency of your volume is higher. People talk about how much volume are you doing in the gym, right? I'm doing 3 sets of this, 4 sets of this, 10 sets of that. But there's no regard for how much are you getting out of your current volume. So if someone has very poor hip flexion and internal and external rotation, and that doesn't even account for the notion of them, how low into their squat are they able to get? They are getting their volumes in the gutter, right? The quality of their volume, the bang for their buck that they're getting is not nearly as high as it could be or should be. And so the idea of training the internal environment to facilitate more productive external task-specific exercises is basically the point that we're trying to get across here. And so here we are, giving our viewers the intro video as to what does the concept mean? What are we trying to get across? People could reference this and be like, that makes sense. Hope that as we start promoting more of these videos, or as we start showcasing some of the footage of us training in this manner, to showcase what high quality exercise looks like and basically get the point across that exercise is really complicated. The human body is unbelievably technical and it's oversimplified. So we have the entire fitness industry ego lifting about external training when so many people do not meet the prerequisite ranges of motion to be doing those tasks, right? To be imposing those tasks on their body. If you guys have any questions, shoot us comments. I'm happy to elaborate on anything. And so here we are, bodybuilding, not body breaking. Be on the lookout for future videos.